Welcome to Washington Football Week with your host, one half of that dynamic duo, Sean Spencer, and South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer.
Don't play us if you're undefeated.
Where we celebrate past success while looking to a bright future. There's a youth movement in Washington, and they're ready to take the reins. Led by Fire.
Play aggressive.
It's a new day. New dawn. No longer the laughing stock. It's time to take them. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy, Sean Spencer, one half of that dynamic duo that is Let's Talk Football. And you see who it is. You see who it is on this Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. My guy, South Carolina's finest. We're at 75 and feeling fine. Will Kramer. What up, Will?
Oh, man. Happy Wednesday. You're right. We got an early spring going on here. I was listening to Kevin Sheehan's podcast, and he was saying that next week y'all are about to get dumped on some snow.
No, we're about to get dumped on tonight. It's supposed to be an ice storm tonight. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I don't live in the DMV anymore, man. I can't do that.
I understand. I completely understand. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It just went from being 60s 2 days ago. You know what I mean? Even so far as to yesterday, it was that much. And now it's already back down to 37, something like that. We're supposed to get ice tonight, and then we're supposed to get snow on this weekend.
Oh.
It's ridiculous.
It's hard. South. You get that false spring that comes through, man. It hits you like you were saying. You got in the 60s and you're like, all right, let's bring it on. Let's bring on March. Let's warm this thing up. Let's go outside. And then they're like, winter is not done.
Oh yeah, jackets started going off, sleeves started coming up. You're just like, oh, okay, this feels good. This feels good. But we all knew it wasn't going to last. You lived in this area. You knew January, February, those were fickle months. And albeit this is nowhere near what it was when we were younger, when we were getting dumped on once or twice in January, once or twice in February, that really did some damage. This is still, for me as an adult, it's like, I'm done. Okay.
Yes.
We've had our way. We've had our snow. I've dealt with it. Everything's finally clearing up. It's time to move on. That's where I'm at, man. I envy you, my friend. Yo, so look, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? You know who it is. It's you guys. And we are here, Washington Football Weekly. Hope all is well with you. We are 4 days until Super Sunday, where the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs will meet for the Super Bowl. And who's going to win? Don't care. It's not Washington.
Right.
We were this close.
This is I'm the most thing I'm looking forward to in this Super Bowl is the food that I'm cooking. We've got a Philly cheesesteak skillet that we're going to do, and we're making some Kansas City style ribs. And that is what I am excited about. I couldn't care less about the game, and I probably will at some point say, I'll read stories. I'll read some bedtime stories. Let's go upstairs.
Yeah. I'm good. I just don't have any. I want to see it for potential history, for potentially seeing the Eagles. I love the Super Bowl altogether, but this is different. Years in the past, we're not even in it. We're not even in the playoffs. Okay, cool. It's a big game. Let's see what happens. We were this close. We should be playing in this daggone game. That's why I'm not watching. I'm bitter.
See, and I think I'm apathetic because I'm sick of the Chiefs. I'm sick of Mahomes. And I can't stand Philly fans, which is too bad because I said this last night on the roundtable. on paper, these are the best two teams, and we should be extremely excited for this matchup. But it's just like, I don't want this game to end. I don't even want this game to be played.
No. And to your point, you got, like I said, history, potential first ever three-peat. Then on the other side, you have a great story with Saquon rejuvenating his career. I don't even want to say comeback or any of that. I mean, the Giants just sucked, and they weren't using him. He had injury issues, but him kind of coming back and having the season that he's had, and just the redemption story of Jalen Hurts getting back to this place and wanting to finally get over the hump. Yes, the storylines are there. All that stuff is great, but again, we were this close.
Were we that close?
We were in the championship game.
We were 60 minutes away, but were we that close?
Just like EA Sports, we were in the game, Will. All right? That's all I need. That's all I need. Yo, but look, we got to move on. This is Washington Football Weekly. And shout out to Misador Watson said, nobody really knows who they want to win. Can't they both lose? Hey.
Yes. Can
Absolutely.
we end in a tie?
Absolutely. But look, we got to talk Washington. And Will, there was some news that came out. There was a lot of speculation for a long time about what are we going to do. A lot of people didn't like the name Commanders, and we have it, but you're winning. And I've always said, winning cures all ails. It makes people forget about all that stuff. And it looks like this name is here to stay. Josh Harris had in a press conference. Well, your face says it all, Will. What's up, man?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So Josh Harris did a press conference, and he got asked about the team name because there were some rumors going around, and he has said that the name is here to stay. And since then, people are legitimately pissed at him, and for the first time, they're like, he's made a mistake. We don't like this guy. It's kind of funny that we're coming off the greatest season in 30 years in the franchise, and people are furious right now because he said, "Oh yeah, we're sticking with Commanders." So hey, make sure you're checking us out on Washington Football Weekly on Apple and Spotify, because I did a quick little emergency pod yesterday about this, so I'm not going to replay everything I said there, but part of me feels like, some of this is, why would you rebrand right now? This shouldn't be what we're talking about right now. We should be talking about the fact that, later on in this pod, what we're talking about is how excited we are to improve this roster that went to the NFC Championship game. And he's having to answer doggone questions about, at some point, do you think you're going to be changing the name? So that part kind of stunk. But I also think he's in a situation where I don't know. I think they kind of know that nothing is going to work. They know we can't wear the shirt that I'm wearing. And that will never be the name. And so they know it doesn't matter what they do, whether you go Warriors, Hogs, Red Wolves, Rampage, which was never one of the ones, even though I just keep saying it. No one's going to truly embrace it. So they might have just said, forget it. Let's go with Commanders for now.
Yeah. And which is fine. And it goes away from my point where it says, if you win, people will forget about it. Because no, people won't forget about it. But look, let's play devil's advocate for a little bit and say, we know how we came to this name. It was not because we wanted to. It wasn't because all of a sudden Dan Snyder grew a heart 3 sizes too big and said, oh, I really care for these people. No, they were coming after him. His sponsors and things were pulling out because they didn't like the Redskins name. So then we went to becoming the football team. And then they had this whole big deal where they asked the fans, what do you guys want to do? What are your thoughts? And the fans were adamant. They wanted this. They wanted that. They had their opinions. They definitely did not choose the Commanders.
Right.
And that's what he went with. Let me ask you, the Commanders, albeit, yes, you're absolutely right. We've had the greatest season that we've had in a while, but there is still that connection from Commanders to Dan Snyder. Could you make the argument that in order to kind of finally get rid of all that, you would want to change it to something?
this is why fans are so upset, is they feel like they got punched in the face by Josh Harris by saying he's keeping the team name, because they felt, hey, this group didn't pick this name. If there's ever an ownership group that is going to change it and is trying to change a culture to rebuild and rebrand, this would be the opportunity. And that's where the people are just so frustrated, because it's like, oh, what do you mean you're going to keep it? And so, yeah. And you know what? They probably would not have picked Commanders if they were in charge. Part of the reason Snyder landed on Commanders is because he wasn't going to pay the money for Red Wolves or get into a litigation fight with the Timberwolves over just wolves in general. He refused to give any more money out. And so they're like, well, let's pick a name that's not trademarked, So Warriors was not an option because of it. And it has been said that Dan Snyder has said for years, if he ever had to change the name, he would just change it to Warriors and keep the old Indian Head logo and move on with his day. And it was going to cost him money. So I think that is what people are so frustrated with, is we really thought we were going to cleanse ourselves from everything Snyder, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't. And it's a shame, but at the same time, we have to then come back to the fact that this has been the greatest season since 1991. And yes, we did come up just a little bit short, but there's nothing but positive vibes and feels on the horizon. So I guess the next question would be, Will, how many years of potentially winning like this is it going to take for people to finally be like, all right, that's fine, this is my new team? Or I mean, there's going to be people, and you and I both know them, there are going to be people that will continue to wear the shirt, and they will never change, and they will say, this is my team, it's the Redskins, and it's always going to be. There it is. We're not reaching those. But for the people like you and I that do have that memory of the joy, the Joe Gibbs, the Doug Williams, all those great years with the Redskins, and now for it to be the Commanders, when is it ever going to be enough, or will it ever be enough for us?
Right. That's a great question. That is the hardest part, I think, of this whole thing, where they are trying to figure out, are there the Redskin purists who are never coming back, or are the people that got really excited as this team started winning and went on the run that were willing to be like, well, I don't like this, but I like my team playing well. But you've also got young folks. My son's 5 years old. He only knows Commanders right now. Yep. That's all he's going to grow up with. And there could be a time when the word Commanders doesn't sound as stupid to people as it does right now. Just like if you were to start a team in Pittsburgh, would you be like, Steelers,
Right.
And if you were to start a team in Wisconsin, would you be like, the Packers, let's go? I'm so happy to be, supporting that. No, but nobody cares, because two things: they're historical franchises that win. There is some homage to the area, so you kind of get that. But more importantly, it's just like it's a nickname. And if the team wins, people stop caring of that. So there could be a chance that, let's be honest, Sean, eventually the people who knew him as Redskins are going to die. So
there it is. I can't say. That's absolutely true. And it's going to take that to then start to, that name start to fall away. But again, like we've said, and I'm going to keep reiterating this, the only thing to stop the chatter is to win. So if you put in a couple Lombardi trophies under the name Commanders, those new fans are going to definitely outweigh the older fans. And the problem with some of those older fans like us is that there was that 20, 25-year gap where was literal misery. And majority of that time was Redskins. That was under Redskins. So while we might remember 80, well, a lot of us don't remember 83. 87, you and I were very young. And even 91, we're in elementary school. So a lot of those people don't. We know fans that are our age that don't even remember those times. They weren't fans at that particular time. So you win Super Bowls, you become giants as far as how dominant you are in play and everything. They'll completely forget that. I do want to ask this though, because we still want to talk about connections, and there has been conversation about potentially bringing back some of the uniforms, some of the jersey. You and I have talked about, if we named the Warriors or Rampage or something, can we bring back the old Indian head logo? Something that kind of reaches across the aisle and says, okay, we're not going to be the Redskins. That is done. That's dead to us right now. But we do respect the imagery. We do respect kind of how that bridges the gap to the old and the new. Is that something that's on the table?
Gosh, fans want it to be. And from the poll that I ran over the weekend, a name like Warriors, Renegades, Rampage, and even Commanders was the choices over new name, new brand, like Hogs and Red Wolves and Wolves was below that. So everything is about that logo. And where, like, if you're talking about the way to bridge, most fans have been sharing, if you can't get Redskins, but you can bring back the old Indian head, they're seeing what they grew up with on the field. Even if the team is called the Commanders, you've got it right there. Boom. That logo. But if you're looking on the 50-yard line and you see that logo, you're thinking back to your time. You and I are thinking back to December free football games because people would give us tickets to go to the games.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. And so that is the biggest bridge. Yeah. But there's still major obstacles with that. There's a lot of speculation that the NFL is preventing that. However, the headline, like you said, and I will say that is like I want to be able to wear my Redskin stuff, even if it just says Washington with the Indian head logo, and it may be Commanders, but it's new and it's what I remember. And, I would love that. But what Josh Harris did mention is they're doing something with uniforms. He wouldn't say what it was, but he said, we're trying to honor the past is when he said that. And the week before, that's when Grant Paulson says that he had been told for months that they are rebranding the white uniforms to look closer to the Joe Gibbs Redskins era. Which would be part of the way of saying, hey, I remember what that looked like. Kind of like when with the Washington football team, the helmets looked stupid, in my opinion, but the uniform stayed the same. The jerseys were the same. And so that sort of helped people, even though it was a bridge name. It wasn't like when the Commanders rebranded, and people were sitting there going, well, that's an expansion team out there.
Right. Now, the red jerseys, let's be honest, they were red, and then the all blacks. And then a lot of people, difference of opinion, a lot of people like the all blacks with the yellow layering of everything. Personally, you guys know how I feel. I don't want to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, so that's kind of the connection that I have between the two. But to your point, once we got to the Commanders, the difference was noticeable. I would love for them to bring something like this back. I would love for them to bring even if it's a color rush where we bring back the old Washington gear and then we just have the number or we just have the W on the helmet. I can do that. I understand the reasoning behind staying away from maybe the Redskins or maybe some of that stuff. Although there's certain commanders in chief that are kind of taking away certain things like the end racism and all that. So there might be a little bit of...
Should we be called the Commanders, Sean?
You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years. We know how we got here. And again, if you keep winning, people are going to slowly start to forget these little things. And I think the uniforms, if in some way, shape, or form, we can kind of make them somewhat similar, I think that will add that connection. That will be that little something for you and I to be like, these are my guys. These are my guys. But then at the same time, you and I have talked to, we got a buddy that says doesn't really matter. As long as we're winning, as long as we're bringing in the right guys, as long as, JD5, yada, 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 we're fine. So I gotta rest on the fact that we win. You can call me Johnny, got me Jack, whatever you want to call me. We're winners. We're constantly winning. And I would love to bring that stuff back. But then this is the other part that I started thinking recently. And it is, I love my memories of the Redskins. I love my memories of 4th and 1, John Riggins down the sideline, 42-10, Doug Williams over the Broncos, Washington beating the high-powered Buffalo 37-24. I love those memories. And I kind of like that where they're at. I want them to be there. I want them to have that image of greatness, as opposed to the 20 years after that, which was really rough. What this is now, this isn't my team. Not my team, but this isn't that team from the 80s. This is a totally different aura, a totally different feel to it. And if we bring back that success, yeah, that'd be great. But if you look at the Steelers and their championships that they've won in the 2000s, they don't sit there and say, oh, it's the Steel Curtain team. But they say, oh, there's some things that are like that. And that's what we are. Yeah, there's some things that are like the past. But this is the Commanders. We are taking command. This is a new direction. So I would love doing this unis thing. But at the same time, it's not imperative. I don't need to have it for me to, accept us again. As long as I can still wear the things that I have that are still Washington, still Redskins, that's fine. But even with me, even with those shoes that I showed you, there was a little bit of a time where I was kind of like, am I being hypocritical? Am I kind of, I don't want people to act or call me out a certain way and this and that. And now I'm just openly wearing it and I'm saying, oh yeah, this is my team. But once you learn what the reason is and why there's an issue, then it comes back to you to, okay, am I perpetuating this thing that I'm supposed to be standing up against? You know what I mean? And we've all given excuses. We know what the connection is with the Redskins and the logos and all that stuff. So I would love to have a connection like it, but at the same time, I'm good. This season did a lot to kind of break that for me. Had this been another 4-13 season, yes, let's go back. But we have a bright future. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll be honest with you. This is where you and I differ. Because we did talk about this going on the playoff run. Like it was a lot of fun, but seeing the uniforms that we were wearing, it did feel different. This playoff run felt different than 2015 and 2012 and all that stuff. If they brought back the Redskin on the helmet, even for one game a year, Sean, I'm telling you, as a grown man, I'd be crying at the start of that game, seeing that on the field, seeing that logo again. I know I would be. It's been a long time. And I got to the point where I was never embarrassed to wear the symbols. I was more embarrassed to wear Washington stuff because we sucked so much about the reactions that people were going to give to me. So that's how I felt with it. And here's the biggest problem that why Washington Redskin fans cannot get over this is this weekend you were going to have the Kansas City Chiefs play. So two things. We cannot get over the fact that you are going to say you can't bring back the Indian head logo. We don't want Native American imagery. And you got a team that's called the Chiefs wearing it. So that's the first one. And the second one is the chop that you're just talking to. And they played it. JP Finley said at the Super Bowl media days, they were playing the chop song. And he said, cannot believe the NFL is playing this at an NFL event and they're okay with this. And that's the bigger part of the hypocrisy that you just talked about. Your feeling of am I disparaging another ethnic group wearing this? And yet you are going to let and celebrate the fact that Chiefs fans do the tomahawk chop and do a stereotypical chant, but yet you're saying a team can't, for a throwback reason, use a picture of a member of a tribe that was created. That is the hypocrisy, which is why it's still such a big deal in DC. It's bullshit. Pardon my French on here. We try and keep this clean. But this one, it really is a bunch of garbage that the NFL does with that.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. I too would be.
Well, so I got one thing about like the new uniforms and what does excite me. I think this is going to be fixed.
Okay, good.
Good. I do.
We both wear it.
We wear it, but we don't love this W. And I alluded that to on yesterday's emergency pod. If you look at the Wisconsin Motion W, the Washington Huskies W, those are better looking W's out there. Mm-hmm. And this now, I think this is meant to be kind of like a military, aircraft type stuff, but it doesn't do it for me. And so if the worst thing they've done is said so far that they're going to keep the name Commanders, everything else this ownership group has done has been correct. And I have faith that whatever they're putting together from a uniform standpoint, to if they tweak the W in any way in the next, maybe this year or throughout the next couple of years, I do feel like they are going to make tweaks that improve the look of the team, and that gives me encouragement.
Yeah, that excites me. I want to see that, and like I said, I will most certainly be 100% on board with the kind of color rush throwbacks, or if we get to play Dallas with those old unis, or maybe in division like the Giants and the Eagles with those old unis. Yes, I would love that. Absolutely. Even if we just kept the Washington and not the Redskins, but had the logo, or the script R with the two feathers coming out of the back, like anything to bring that back. And it always gets a little funny for me because I understand the reason why the hoopla, but then I also understand the reason why he sold it, because if it wasn't for them trying to, his sponsors jumping out of ship, he wouldn't have done anything with it, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation, even though at that time there was still people that were protesting in X, Y, and Z. So I do agree that change needs to happen in certain regards, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. And the hypocrisy is just, it's ridiculous. And when you see that, and we talk about the Chiefs, Florida State is the same way. Now, obviously this year was not great for them, but they didn't stop chopping. And Chief Asiago didn't stop at the beginning of each game and throwing his spear into the ground. So, I mean, what are we doing right now? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think his name is Asiago.
It's not Asiago? Oh,
no.
I think I had Asiago for it. Yeah, what is it
similar, but it's not Asiago.
But so yes, I don't. Yes, we got to look at.
I'm looking here.
Yeah.
Osceola.
Okay.
Which is, I think, the tribe in the area, the Seminole tribe and all that, or Osceola County. That's what they're named after. The Rick Tallahassee's. And awesome.
Yeah. Not Asiago. Yes. So yes, if we can bring it, look, at the end of the day, whatever they can kind of do, and to your point, the fact that they have been trying to bridge the gap, bring some of the old guys back, make it that feel and that culture of winning again. If they can bring it back, I'm all for that. And I want to say this, kudos to Josh Harris for coming out and putting his foot down on a very touchy subject, especially for Washington fans, and saying, this is where we're doing going forward. You have to do that. Don't let the fans, don't bend to their, to their will and they're upset. You control the product on the field and what we're doing. And if this is what you're going to do, I have to believe as a Washington fan that you have our best interests at heart, especially from where we came from with Dan Snyder. Whatever you're doing, like you said, I'll be on board with that.
Right. Yep.
So we are going to move on and not talk about cheese or any of that anymore. It's the off season, ladies and gentlemen, and albeit we came to the off season a lot later than we normally do, we are still here and still excited about it. There have been a number of names kind of floating around. We're going to get into a little roster in a little bit, but there's a name that's been tagged to us, or we have kind of opened up the conversation. I don't know how many people have actually said, he could come to Washington. Myles Garrett. He requested a trade out of Cleveland amid all the stuff they have going on. Should Washington go after him, Will?
Yes. And he got asked the question today, hey, you going to go to the Commanders? And he said, we'd be pretty good, wouldn't we?
Come on.
And he's like, well, there's a couple of, he goes, they could use a defensive end. He's like, as can a bunch of other teams. So that's when his agent was like, yo, what are you saying? Right there. Yes, I think you absolutely have to make a call to Cleveland and say, okay, so what are you looking for a Myles Garrett? Not just because of his sack production, but I think he would be just a huge play for us in general. We have to improve our edge. We had a problem with our run game, and Garrett could be someone that solidifies that edge and takes some of the pressure off of the linebackers to make make plays in the run fits. And so, yeah, I think you do have to look at him. Plus the sack factor, the fact that he can get double-digit sacks every single year. He can make the offense force to chip with the tight end or running back, which means you take some of the pressure off the defense. And how many people do they have to cover when you got someone like that? And if you look at what would we be now? We have to find out what we're going to be giving up, but our first round pick is 29. If you get a guy like Myles Garrett, chances are next year we're going to make the playoffs too. And so we could be picking 25th and beyond. Like we're not sending them a top 5 pick anymore, And so that's going to diminish the value of what we can offer. But heck yeah, I think you look into this really strong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this even more than any of those splash moves that we were talking about from last year. You said it right there. I mean, one of our number one problems has been rush defense. Having a guy like Myles Garrett on that defense, like you said, it sets the edge, but it also it gives us a veteran and a dominant player on one of the 3 facets of our defense, which is that D line. Again, we don't know what we're going to have to give up. You and I have talked off about maybe is Jonathan Allen what we're going to need to, keep moving. We don't know about some of these guys' contracts, but if you were to put a piece like that on that D-line, then we were potentially able to re-sign a Bobby Wagner and have that in the linebacker. Then Lattimore in the secondary. Now you have 3 cornerstone pieces on that defense, which will give you, honestly, I think to your point, now those offenses have to think, okay, not how we're going to attack them. How are we going to stop this guy?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to sit here? We got to focus on this guy. And now if Garrett's over here shutting this side down, now Wagner can roam a little bit. Now, all of a sudden, you got this quarterback under duress. Lattimore is picking it up on the back end, or your boy Quan Martin, or some of those cats. You know what I mean? So it makes everybody's job easier. And you know me, I'm one of those that's like, let's save the money. Let's start build through the draft. Let's kind of build it up like that. Let's make the move. Let's put down the money. Let's add whatever he needs. We know the kind of team we have. If we can get this guy in, and the fact that he's even having this conversation, let's go back a year and a half ago, Will.
Yes.
Would we even consider Myles Garrett somebody that wants to come? No. And the fact that we have that he's even joking kind of about potentially coming to Washington, I think that shows how far we've come. But number 2, we're a competitor. We're a contender now, and people are starting to notice that and realize that. I say make the move, man. I say bite the bullet, go get this guy, and let's work around that, because what that does also is, just like with Lattimore, it kind of pulls back on if I need to definitely go for an edge in the draft or in free agency. I get that guy. Now that position for me is set. I can sit here and get a guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th round and work him up into this, and then we can do it. So that does so much for the team. And I know the price tag will be high, but it is so worth it.
It would be. And it would be worth multiple first-round picks, even if it's this year's and next year's, because just like you said, you're not going to get a Myles Garrett picking at 29. You may get a George Karlaftis, or a Ryan Kerrigan type player who's going to be a very solid player for you, and a good player, but you're not going to get Myles Garrett is a Hall of Fame worthy player right now.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's what he's tracking. Like, you're not going to get that at 29. So you got to weigh some of that. And next year you wouldn't get the same, so it really could be worth it. And to what your point is, it would also allow you then to start focusing other areas of the draft in cheaper ways. Like, say we have to give up 2 firsts and Deron Payne. That will allow you to say, okay, to Jonathan Allen, if you're going to stick around, we're either cutting you, or we need to do an extension that lowers your cap, or we're drafting another D tackle with a 2nd round pick or our 3rd round pick. Infusing some additional talent to help that defensive line that doesn't cost as much. The other thing is, now there's a lot of speculation that either this is a contract ploy or whoever gets him is going to need to re-sign him, because I think he only has about 2 years left on his current deal.
Yeah.
But his cap is maybe like less than 25 a year, which is what we'd be paying Jonathan Allen. So we already have kind of allocated spots to absorb something like that. So it's not $40 million that you're bringing on, and he just takes up, 2/3 of our offseason cap immediately. So there's a lot of positives to this where, like, hey, this, like, the juice maybe worth the squeeze on this one.
Yeah. And I'm here for it, man. I'm looking forward to potentially having that conversation and if not, having a visit and see where he fits, seeing where he fits in this defense, seeing where he fits in the scheme. What are we really talking about? Getting Myles Garrett potentially? Like, this is where we are now, Will. Like, this, if off seasons have been fun when we were just speculating about getting mid-range guys, think about this. If this is where we're starting now, obviously, like you said, getting him, we'd have to start figuring out some things with the money and everything, but it would be so well worth it to get a guy like this. And I mean, we're favorites. If we get a guy like a Myles Garrett, top 2 or 3 teams in the NFC, we're favorites by far to go to the Super Bowl. And I hate doing that. I hate those people that are like every year Super Bowl. But when you start to get these pieces together and align them, and think about the little bit, we're going to talk about roster review in a little bit, but think about some of the little spots that had we had a dominant force at that spot, this season could be completely different. Not completely different. We're only 1 game away, but still that aids that team. You look at an Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions. We were able to beat them, but if they had a healthy Aiden Hutchinson in that game, who knows what would have happened? I think he had 8 or 9 sacks and he only played 6 games or something like that. Yeah. Right.
Insanity.
So exactly. So we've seen throughout history having that dominant edge could completely wreak havoc. And we look at even the Eagles. They didn't have, I mean, they blitzed from time to time. They didn't have to blitz because the front four was getting it done. We know the other pieces of that front four and what they were able to do without a dominant edge. Imagine putting Myles Garrett on there and having him run with those guys. Yeah, it would honestly just be something that I'm super giddy about. So I'm excited to see. Flipping from the defense to the offense, another name came out, Cooper Kupp. Apparently him and the Rams, something's going on there. Would he be a good fit in Washington? Before that, and I said this in the group chat with you, me, and Ab. It's kind of funny that all of a sudden, they're so ready to get rid of him and get him out of here. Is that something we should be concerned with?
Right. And I don't know if it's a contract thing. I don't know if it's, he's had some injuries, and so they just feel like, he's on the downward slope. At first, when I was like, oh, Cooper Kupp, well, what's it going to cost? And I'm like, I'm not giving a first-round pick for Cooper Kupp. But then, this is just one person, but they were saying, like, no, with his contract, with his age, and you're looking at maybe a third-round pick, but likely a 4th or a 5th. And if that's the case, I think you got to look into that. I mean, yeah. They talked about, he would, go over the middle a lot, and it's like, oh, well, that's where Zach Ertz was. But the more weapons you can provide JD5, I think we have to do it. So I think it's worth a look into. I think I'd rather go with the first guy, depending, even if it costs us a lot, not an RG3 trade, but even if it costs us a lot, then Cooper Kupp. But I think it's worth exploring. Yeah.
I definitely think you have to look into it. I mean, obviously, we still are looking for that wide receiver number 2. I know Terry was saying Diami's it, and shout out to him in those 2 games in the playoffs. But Noah Brown getting hurt, and Zacchaeus kind of getting in from time to time. He had fumbling issues a couple of games. These guys are good and good extra pieces. Luke never really showed out this year. To have that solid number 2, we've been talking about it since day one. To get a guy like a Cooper Kupp, who we've seen how well he's able to run his routes, and you see his ability and how much of a threat he can be. And if we are potentially getting him for the price tag that you're talking about, where it's a lot lower than maybe it was at his hype at the peak, I think it's a steal. And I mean, honestly, you start looking at that. You give JD5 two guys that have great hands and can be game breakers.
Yep.
I mean, I said you'd have to, but again, a lot of that goes with, like you were saying, what we do with Myles Garrett, how that whole thing plays out, and the price tag for Cooper Kupp. Because if they're still looking at him as, he was at the height where he was maybe a first round or second round pick, I might pump my brakes on that. But
yes,
it is definitely a position that we need to focus on. And I know you and I have been looking in the draft for notable wide receivers. But again, this would be kind of similar to Myles Garrett, where what he comes to the table with, how good he can be. Now you implement that into this offense. Now all of a sudden, okay, I don't have to worry about re-signing a couple of these other guys because I got two guys in here that I know will bail my quarterback out. And that could be huge for us.
Right. Yep.
So, yeah. So it should be interesting. Let us know, folks, what you think. If you would pick up a Cooper Kupp and bring him to Washington, or Myles Garrett. We've given our 2 cents on what we think would happen. It would be quite interesting. But hey, we've been talking about it. Will, let's get right into it. This roster review. We've talked at length throughout the season and even before the season. What were our weaknesses? What were some of the holes? What were our strengths? As we've seen this year, and yes, it might have taken me till December or January to find out, but our strength is at quarterback, number 5, JD5, and we'll talk about when we knew he was that guy. Like I said, 2025. I didn't know till 2025. But let's go into that. Let's go into the roster and kind of look at it. All right, what do we saw from this season? Where do we need to upgrade? We could start. I mean, at quarterback, obviously, we're good with the starter, but where do you go behind him? Mariota, Hartman? Are we looking draft, or are we looking elsewhere? What do you think?
I think it's going to be, what does Marcus Mariota want to do? Is it a chance for him to go to a team like Vegas where he's a chance to start? Could he go down to Florida and back up Tua and be a chance to mentor him? I'm not really sure. But I think I will say this as someone who's not a Marcus Mariota fan. He did a phenomenal job with us, as not only the times he had to come in and against Dallas, in the Panthers game, but also he was a mentor to Jaden. And so I think, do you want to pay $10 million for a backup quarterback? Not really, but I think he's shown it. And then I think, so if he's interested, yes, I'd be interested in bringing him back. Otherwise, I think you got to figure out a veteran type situation if he doesn't come back. I don't think we're ready to turn over Sam Hartman as the backup, but I think Sam Hartman could and should be in the running to be QB3 the way Jeff Driscoll was this past year.
Oh, yeah. Keep Sam Hartman in-house. If you can get him in that offense, I will always advocate for him, coming out of Wake Forest, and then he did that time at the 1 year at Notre Dame. But the guy has the ability, as the ladies around here know, he's a dreamboat. You know what I mean? So he's going to be – but even the guys in-house like him. But, yeah, to your point about Mariota, that $10 million, that's a pretty penny. But at the same time, can you really put a price tag on the level of just that veteran leadership that he has been the calming force for Jaden? We look at that Atlanta game where Jaden is hurt and he comes out on the field and he says, "You were built for this. This is what you do. Get your breath, get back, win, and go win the game." Those are the type of things that a coach can say, but it's not going to resonate like a player, like a guy that's been in there, who's been in toe-to-toe, both Heisman Trophy winners. So when you can recognize and speak to that, I think that's huge, and I don't think you can replace that. And I gotta apologize, man. Before the season, I was like, "What are y'all doing? Mariota is far past his prime. What in the hell are y'all doing bringing this guy in here?" But the way he's been able to work behind the scenes with Jaden and just kind of, I think one of the reasons why Jaden has been so calm throughout the year is because he has a guy like that who's been at the height, who's struggled, been down, who's been through team to team to team. He knows what it's like in the league, and he can talk to Jaden about some of the pitfalls and things like that. So I think that's invaluable to have a guy like that there. And I think we have to, if we can, if he's trying to, who knows? I know this part of his career, I don't know if he's looking for that number one to be that starter. You know what I mean? We saw what happened in Atlanta the year before, where he started, had some time, and then obviously went out. And as we saw this year, they went and got 2 quarterbacks. So, I would want to keep him, but it'd be interesting to see how they play the whole thing at QB. Moving on, and this is a very big.
You take this one first.
Oh yeah, got to go with my position at running back. Obviously, we got B-Rob, Austin Eckler, then McNichols got in there, got some action, and Chris Rodriguez, who's a dog. Everybody is about it. And where do we go from here? And I'm gonna be very honest with you. This has been one of the more disappointing parts of our team for me, and it has been a lot to do with B-Rob. The fumbling issues, yes, were a problem, but more, it seemed like the way that he was running this year, at times it looked like he was trying to find contact to the point, like even to his detriment, where it's kind of like, bro, you could have just cut to the left and you would have had 5 yards, and it's like you're running after a guy who's not trying to make, so, and a lot of people have been ready to get rid of him, and I love what I saw from Dan Quinn and right before the playoff game and right before those last games where he went and he talked to him and they kind of got on the same page. We need to have a solid run game in this offense. It's been that way since as far as we can remember, and even though we're running that air raid offense, we've seen that the running game is what kind of helps this thing tick. When we have not been able to run, JD5 has struggled. So we have to figure that out. This is the place where I would potentially look in the draft. This is a place where I would see, are there teams that are interested in potentially a B-Rob? Now, personally, as far as Eckler, I want to keep Eckler. You know what I mean? We obviously had the 2 concussions, so we don't know his shelf life. We don't know how long he's going to be in. But when he was able to play, that made such a difference, not only in the run game, but in the pass game. I think Eckler is what we expected Antonio Gibson to be. Yes. That's what we wanted from that. A guy that could run and make his moves in space, but he can also be such a threat when it comes to him being out in open field. So, and in the pass game. So that's huge. Here's where things get tricky for me. McNichols and Rodriguez. So as far as McNichols, I can take him or leave him. I love him, what he's been able to do, but with my recency bias of him fumbling in the Eagles game, get out of Washington, right? but truthfully, when you look at this season, when you look at B-Rob being out, when you look at Eckler being out, and I know everybody wants to shout out and tout Rodriguez, but McNichols was a consistent force. McNichols got in here and was able to be that balance of running and receiving that I think helped us to kind of just level out, as opposed to Rodriguez, who in my opinion is another bruiser. He's another B-Rob, and is just all downhill. So I love in those 4 that you have to lightning, thunder, but I don't think you keep all 4. I if it was up to me, I would shop B-Rob. I would see what they had, see what they were looking at out there for him. And McNichols, if we can get him on a team-friendly deal, maybe we'll see. But I would be looking at running back. I would definitely be looking elsewhere to see, okay, can we improve at this position? What do you think?
Yes. With the draft, we need to be looking at running back. Absolutely. I don't know what happened with B-Rob towards the end of the season. I don't know if the injury against Dallas with his knee, he never became the same person. I don't know if the offensive line wore down, but our running game went downhill towards the end of the season to where it was non-existent. Jaden Daniel was the only running threat that we had. Yeah. And yet, through the first 8 to 10 games, we had a threat with B-Rob. He was a phenomenal fantasy player for me. He was getting a touchdown a game. He was getting 60 to 100 yards and moving chains and being a tough physical runner. And maybe he broke down himself. Something has to improve there. I think he's still going to be on the roster next year. I don't think there's a trade value for him to make it worth it. But I think you need to be looking at 2 things you mentioned. What a great comparison. Austin Eckler was exactly what we thought we were getting from Antonio Gibson. But when he went out, we had a problem. So I'm thinking you need to go and find somebody that can be that complementary piece potentially, like that Bucky Irvin type runner, so that someone with some speed that could be, spell both those guys. Or if Eckler, he is getting older, he's only one more year left on his deal. Does the guy take over the following year? But I'm also not opposed to getting someone like I'm just going to say a name just for the sake of the names, like a Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech, who's a bigger running back, and RJ Harvey from UCF, someone that could be B-Rob's replacement the next year after. Because I don't think you're in a position now where we need to re-sign B-Rob after this year, but I think he's going to be on the roster. So let's find something that can either spell him better than Rodriguez could if he's not getting it done, or be a change of pace from what he's got. And this is a loaded and running backs draft. And the league is starting to trend towards running backs again. Look what we talked about Saquon, Jahmyr Gibbs up in the Detroit. So I think we need to be taking advantage of this in this draft and find somebody, whether it's a bell cow or a change of pace. We need to get something in here.
Oh, absolutely. And at the very least, we just need to have it where it's a competition. We need to maybe light that fire under him and say, hey, listen, this is what we're looking at. Because I've said this year after year, the best ability is availability. And as we've seen, B-Rob hasn't been able to complete the seasons. In that year, obviously, where he got shot, he came in and I think he played 8 or 9 games, and then towards the end of the year, he was out, and he was saying it took a toll on him. And we still don't know if that's still affecting him. You know what I mean? We haven't – not every day you see a guy that is shot one year and then comes back and has these long careers in X, Y, and Z. So for me, I definitely think this is a place of concern. We need to take a look that, maybe we need to make that move. And I would not be opposed to looking in the draft for somebody. And depending on, what happens in the draft, I'm kind of hoping the league is still anti-running back, because then there are some guys that if they drop, I would definitely go in that direction.
3 years for Brian Robinson. He has yet to get over 800 yards in a season. He had 799 this year, 797 his rookie year. So he's capable. He's a capable back, but is that, if we're trying to build towards a Super Bowl, is that someone that's going to get you there? Probably not.
Right. He almost needs to be the backup bruiser or somebody. What kind of like what Rodriguez is right now, where you have somebody else as the main guy in there.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens with that. Look, let's move on down to wide receiver. Obviously, this has been the big glaring hole for us. Terry, shout out to him, having a great season, over 1,000 yards, playing the season that we've always wanted him to play. Now he's finally got his quarterback. And then there were the rest. Now we have Ertz. And do you want to make wide receiver and tight end separate?
Let's split them.
Okay.
Let's split them.
So taking Ertz out, now there's a big gap between Terry's numbers and the rest. I know Diami's name was brought up, and you all know how I feel about Diami Brown. We know what's up, Alex at HTTR. We know Noah Brown.
Mm-hmm.
He played his part when he was healthy. Olamide Zaccheaus played a big part for us. Obviously, there's that game where he had those fumbles. I mean, we've been able to get production far more than what we thought. But again, when we had those tough games and in those losses, teams showed, especially Philly, if we play too deep, keep everything in front of us, and we focus on Terry, the rest of those guys ain't going to beat us. So what do we do here? I mean, short of looking at everybody under Terry and just saying, whoop, just refilling it again. Like, what do you think?
T. Higgins, baby. Come on. So yes, we need to improve at wide receiver. We had some good players who made plays. Noah Brown was a great surprise. He was our second leading receiver before he hurt his kidney, so he was a great surprise. Diami Brown made some plays in the playoffs on that run that were really exciting. Zaccheaus made plays. He got first downs. But we need bigger than this. We need more. And this is a position that we need. We need to help Jaden with one or two guys.
Yes.
So whether it's through the draft, whether it's free agency, whether it's through a combination, we need to be addressing wide receiver and getting better. But also, I think promoting competition. I'm not going to steal too much, but I think it's okay to bring in guys and say, we're only keeping 6 of you, and I got 9 here. That type of competition to let them know that, they're going to have to earn their spot. We don't know what we got in Luke McCaffrey. He'll be a second-year player, but from a wide receiver standpoint, he didn't show us much out on the field as a receiver at all. He made some kick returns, and the media all year long, sports reporters in DC kept saying, "Well, Luke is getting open. He's just not getting the ball." Well, he wasn't getting the ball. He wasn't making plays. So we don't know what we have in there, what you can rely on, because right now you're going into this roster with, you've got Terry and Luke McCaffrey, and that's it. I think you have under signed. So they're going to need to bring in some competition. This is going to be a fun thing to watch. What do they turn this receiver group into?
Oh yeah, and between the draft, between free agency, and potentially who we re-signed, we saw at the beginning of this year they got rid of Jahan, which was at that point the only other guy that had production on the team, and we said, well, what are you guys doing? And they've made do with what they've had this year, but this has also been an issue. We don't have the threat of somebody else out there, a la Eagles with AJ Brown and Smith, Devonta Smith. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have those threats out there, so that they shut this guy down, let's come over here. And we'll talk about this in a second, that we could say, oh, it's a tight end, he's the next best thing, but there's still even a limit there with the explosiveness and how they can actually take over the game. So this in the draft and in free agency, as I've circled it, I had it. So we had this thing circled all season long. So this is what we've been waiting for, kind of to look at this, because I absolutely agree with you. And especially for my upcoming 2025 mock draft.
Yes.
There's going to be a couple extra slots for O-linemen. So you wide receivers, get it together. There might only be 5 of you this year. There might only be 5. Just let you know.
Well, but talking about your draft, the other thing we really got to think about is the fact that they are not saying that this is the deepest wide receiver class that they've had, because the last couple of years have been. So that's kind of important to say, like, does that either need to be prioritized early, or can you really go back saying, well, we'll just find somebody in the draft?
Yeah, right. So these next couple weeks will be very telling to see where they go. I mean, you've talked about also Stephon Diggs, and see if we can bring him back to his home area of the DMV, and see if he wants to do an approved deal or something like that. So there might be a couple guys, and I think going back to the Cooper Kupp and Myles Garrett, there might be a couple guys that we don't even know that might get released or might get cut or something like that might have had their eye on Washington, but they didn't know at this time that they were going to be a free agent or have the ability to go elsewhere. So there are guys that this time last year that we had no clue what Austin Eckler or Bobby Wagner was even on the table, much less us start trying to talk about them. So, yeah, we'll see with this one. And moving to the tight end, Ertz, second leading wide receiver on the team. We've seen what he's been able to do. We knew that he was older. So we're basically on borrowed time with this guy. We don't know how many more years he's going to play. And even if he does, God forbid he get hurt, another gap. It's another drop, because then you have Bates, then you have Ben Sinnett, and then you have Yankoff. Okay, the great Yankoff. All right. So with this one, this even more so. Like, what do you do? Do we try to hold out on Bates, the blocker? He's a solid force, but he really is not present in the pass game. Sinnott didn't really show up and do anything in the pass game until the playoff game. And how long can we rely on Ertz? You know what I mean? So does this need to be a focus for us?
I think so. I mean, everything is all about making Jaden's life easier, because you have a star at quarterback. And we always say tight end is a QB safety valve, and he loves Zach Ertz, and so we need to figure out this position of between the draft and who we got. I mean, I think we've got guys in house that are capable, but like you said, there's a lot of names in this draft that are really exciting from a tight end standpoint that can start being groomed to take over when the time comes. So we found that it's a big position in Cliff's offense. It's a big safety valve for Jaden. So it is an important position to that they're going to need to determine.
Oh yeah, and I'm excited to see how they work with that, because what we've seen is that that offense is huge, yes, and the blocking part of it is also huge. We saw when they let Jahan get out of here because he couldn't block and how he wasn't tough. That's where I look at it, Bates, when I'm like, okay, yeah, he's not doing anything flashy, but he's in the mix. Each time when they're blocking, they're running to his side, he's in the mix. And I'll never forget the game where he played against, was it Baltimore, where Queen tries to come out there and was it Queen? Or maybe it was Pittsburgh with Queen, which Queen trying to come over there and rough him up, ripped his helmet off. All of a sudden, you see Bates just stand up and, you know what I mean, with the whole mullet and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, Bates, all right, you're live. So, yeah, I would like to see how much they prioritize the blocking aspect of the tight ends, even though all we look for is who can make the big catch, who can stretch the field and stuff like that. I wonder how much they put into that going forward. So that should be interesting.
It is, and Logan Paulson said on his podcast, or when he was on a podcast, that Bates is one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. That's coming from a dude who knows what he's looking at, and that I think matters. And you're so right. We sit here and be like, Bates on the field again, but he's an extension of the offensive line. And we had heard during the season that they loved him. They loved his nastiness and tenacity. And like you said, that's a Dan Quinn commander right there.
Yes.
So I feel like we've got the pieces on the team already, but who else from the draft could we bring in that's going to inject some youth in there and some excitement as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, look, let's move on to my favorite spot, the O-line. Yes. It was much improved this year, but yet we still had issues. I'm going to be honest. I think this is the place where, especially with memory of last year and how we were able to get Coleman in the year and the time we got him, this is somewhere I want to focus in the draft. Yes. I would potentially use one of the top 3 picks if we can get a quality guy and bring him in-house. I love Coleman over there. Wiley on the other side. Who knows what's going to happen with Wiley if we keep him or let him go or things like that. We've had issues with him over the years. If we can get in another right tackle, if we can get in maybe either through free agency or the draft, I would not be opposed to that at all. I definitely think this is another place we need to promote competition because protect your investment, period. You got to protect Jaden back there. But also, part of the reason why the run game struggled at times, injuries, yes, to the running backs, but also to the O-line. When Dieter came in there, I think they looked at his PFF grade. It was like one of the worst on the team. He struggled when he was in there. In fact, when Biotis wasn't in there, our running game kind of stalled out. So that is one of those things where it's kind of like we need to get beefier, tougher guys in this. Cody Malk type guys, with the position flex. Still bitter, right? Well, we need to get guys like that on the team because how long are we gonna? And shout out to my guy Lucas. How long are we going to be able to hang on to guys like that, and how many years are they going to be able to contribute for us? Before we need to start moving on. So this is definitely an area of concern for me.
This is a pivotal offseason when it comes to the offensive line to see what they're going to do. I think we are unsure of who is going to be the starter at left tackle, left guard, and right tackle. And that's what we'll find out in this offseason. I think Brandon Coleman will be a starter next year, but is it at left tackle? Is it at left guard? Is it at right tackle? Like, what do they do with him? Where do they find out is he best fit? He certainly showed that, hey, they did a great job in the draft of finding someone who can play in the third round. Did he show that he's your left tackle of the future? I'm not so sure about that. Right. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting, like you said. Where does Nick Allegretti? He signed like a 3-year, $18 million contract. Does that mean you have to be the starter? Or maybe he may even sign for a little bit less than that, or could he be a really good backup? I definitely think that they need to improve the interior. I think we got pushed around a little bit. And as great as Biadasz was as a signing, there were moments that he got pushed around. And so I wonder if like improving at if you move Coleman inside to left guard, would that provide some athleticism, some strength, and then you can get a left tackle either through the draft or I won't say it, but there is a free agent that I'm interested in. And then, like you said, the big thing is going to be what do they do with Andrew Wiley? Fans can't stand the guy. I think he had a whole lot less sacks this year than he did last year. You didn't really hear a whole lot about him this year where you did last year. So maybe he's solid enough at right tackle. I'm not sure. So O-line is going to be a fun thing to watch this offseason, how we fix it.
Oh, yeah. He played so good that I believe like week 7, Will had somewhat of a compliment of him. He said he didn't do that bad in this game. And that's all I'm going to say. Look, we expected so much more with him coming off of the Super Bowl Chiefs teams and everything. And he came in with Eric Bieniemy and Pringles, so other Chiefs players and coaches. We thought he can emulate that success. Unfortunately, it has not come to fruition. But like you said, this year was far better. But how much of that also was Jaden getting out of trouble himself?
Yes.
And making those linemen look good. So
yes. That's a big part of it. I think he did a lot of that.
Yeah. So this is going to be a huge place for me. And matter of fact, the trenches, that is going to be it. If you look at the teams that beat us, and namely in the championship, talking about Philly, where they beat us was the trenches. That O-line pushed us around. That D-line got all up in our grills, pushing us, created havoc. Those are the two spots that I think in order to be that perennial championship team, you need to dominate both lines of scrimmage. And we talked about it with the O-line. Obviously, with the D-line, I'm ahead to there. Myles Garrett, that would be a great addition to that. But if we don't do that, we've looked at the Mike Greens from Marshall. We've looked at Shamar Stewart from A&M. Some of these guys that we may want to look at in the draft. We don't know who's going to be coming available in free agency, things like that. How much attention do you put here? Let's say we get Garrett. Let's say we get Garrett. Do you still put attention here in the draft and free agency, or are you set?
Yeah, no, I think this is another position group where we got to see what they're doing because there's a lot of contract situations going on here. And the idea of Jonathan Allen can be released and you get a cap savings. We'll get into that a little bit, but you got to think about is the law firm of Allen and Payne and Newton, did they get it done this year? Has the law firm of Allen and Payne worn out its time in DC? Is it really necessary to keep running it back with this combination? That's the decision that they're going to have to make because we've got to fix our defensive line to get better on our run defense next year. And I don't think necessarily just bringing in a Myles Garrett is necessarily going to do that. But I do think we need to get somebody. And shout out goes to Ab Lowe. He said it from training camp on. When it was like, well, what did we were talking about the free agency moves and drafts, and what did we still miss? And he was like, we're missing an edge. He goes, we don't have anybody on the opposite side, and he wasn't a big fan of Dorrance Armstrong going into the season, and he was like, this defensive line, our edges are not good, and it became a problem area. Cleveland Farrell is just a guy. Dante Fowler had a huge season for us, but he can't play against the run. He is a one-dimensional type player. So it is very important. I think you're looking at a first-round pick, second-round pick, potentially, if we don't get through free agency, of addressing it here. And I'm leaning more towards a bigger guy, someone who can play
Yes.
all 3 downs. It's not. Now I'm not looking at the Mike Greens that weigh 250. I'm looking at the Stewarts from A&M or bigger guys who can be there and play against the run, but also add pass rush.
Yeah, and that's what we need. We need a Vince Wilfork. You know what I mean? We need one of these big guys that just picks up 2 or 3
He's a
guys.
Hall of Famer, Sean.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
we need a
understand
Hall
that.
of Famer in the middle.
Yeah, but I'm talking about size, and namely,
Yeah.
I'm looking at
Okay.
when they had the Patriots on Hard Knocks, and you see him come in the locker room with just overalls on, and you just
Yes,
see
he
he
did.
is just super large. But that's what we need. We need
Yeah.
space eaters. We need guys that are going to take up 1 and 2 linemen and just hold them in so that our linebackers can then come up or the other players can move up in there. I'm blanking on his name right now. Who is the guy that we had coming in towards the later part of the season?
Johnny Newton.
Yeah, Newton. But who else?
Sheldon Day and Carl Davis.
Yes, those guys that were able to come in once we started going 5-man line and you started having those guys kind of push the middle of that pile and once we started making those adjustments, it worked. Well, let's keep going with that. Let's get and we're not going to get an Aaron Donald, but let's get somebody like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter for the Eagles. That those 2 guys are doing essentially what we thought Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen are going to do. Wreak havoc and let the outside go. And to your point about that, I was shocked last year when we moved on from Chase Young and Montez Sweat. And I think it might be that time not to, and this is separating from the whole Ron Rivera thing. I think it's just not working. And I think there's just, you have to start to pull away some of what was there, and it's just we've had opportunities to see what you can do. And shout out to Jonathan Allen coming back from injury and getting in there and contributing a little in the championship, but nothing that none of these guys were able to do was able to stop that run. That was our big problem, and that's what they're supposed to be doing there, shutting down that run game, or at least slowing it down. So that didn't happen. So yeah, I agree. I think we gotta look here, especially inside, to see what we can do to create more issues to maybe free up those linebackers a little bit.
Right.
So, and hey, speaking of the linebackers, hey, first and foremost, I'm going to say Stein Bobby Wagner. Re-sign him. We're going to talk about that. Bring him back in-house. Luvu played outstanding this year. Had that little Palomalu jump over, trying to time the sack, trying to time the snap count and all that. I love that. So after not having any linebackers for 4 or 5 years, we have 2 studs. So keep them in-house. And for me, let's look around the league free agent wise or draft for somebody. Like I would want somebody like who we went after last year, Peyton Wilson, if we can potentially bring him in-house and have him learn under some of these guys. For me, I'm trying to get everything I can out of the the Bobby Wagners and Luvus. What can y'all teach the younger guys? Because we know we can't keep y'all forever, especially Wagner. So I'm really looking draft. I'm really looking free agency. Who is willing to come that can really help our team, but also help with the rotation. If they're gashing us and Wagner and those guys are getting tired, pull them out and let's bring in somebody else that can equal their level of play, or just so it doesn't fall off. It's not such a drop off. Because that I think that's going to be huge for us. But if we're able to also get this D line, I want guys that can attack, guys that can roam, know the defense, but that can attack and create problems for that offense. Because when we've seen, once we've had the Luvus rushing in there and getting sacks, once we had the Wagners and all those guys wreaking havoc on that offense, then all of a sudden that secondary that just we've been struggling all year, we've been able to disguise some of those holes because of that, what the front seven is able to do, man. So at linebacker, what's your focus here? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think what a blessing Bobby Wagner was. And I see that I would want him back again next year, the leadership that he provided out there. Yeah. But he probably should not be out there on third downs. And we probably need to be getting something else that can be helping us out in the passing game in that regard. At first, I've written down that we need another off-ball linebacker, but I kind of think we need to also see what do we have in-house. We drafted Jordan McGee out of Temple. I don't know if they were going to place him at middle linebacker or as an off-ball, but he's very athletic. They also drafted the safety from Washington and Dominique Hampton, and he basically redshirt this year. And at one point, they moved him up to linebacker. And so if you're taking a guy who's a safety and now he's a linebacker, he's going to be a smaller body, but he's going to be quick and able to run. So I'm curious, do we have some guys in-house that are going to be able to join us, for, like you said, for a little bit, not every down, but be able to help us? But is this also the opportunity, if you've got about Bobby Wagner, where he's still contributing, to bring in his heir apparent and give somebody a year to learn under a Hall of Fame person? I'm falling in love with the dude from Oregon, the linebacker, the middle linebacker. I don't have his name in front of me, but is there somebody else out there that can get groomed to take over in a year that would be that? Being able to learn from Wagner is important. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this position, because I think that can also help in the run defense. So it's an important spot.
Oh yeah, and that's going to be huge because of the front seven is imperative to have a solid front seven. And the teams that we've seen, especially ones that beat us, that have been able to kind of push the pocket with the D line and with those linebackers and things like that, and kind of just nullify the wide receivers and all that because of the pressure was becoming too much. That is something that we need to have. And when we were able to have that in some of those games, you saw it shut things down. The Browns game, even the Lions in the divisional game, we were able to push the pocket and kind of collapse it around Jared Goff, and he wasn't able to get past that. So yeah, we absolutely need linebacker, because that's huge. But look, let's go to secondary. Let's go to corner first. Lattimore, we addressed that move by getting him. Obviously, he was injured for the first 4 games, but when he was able to come in, mixed reviews, good and bad. But one thing will say is that when they went up against teams that didn't have maybe that quality, that top tier receiver, or if it wasn't Evans or AJ Brown, that type of stuff, Lattimore was legit. Lattimore did what we expected him to do. We talk about that Saints game that he came in. They didn't even look his way. You know what I mean? So what is your thoughts about secondary? I know Samer still, Noah some of those guys came out, but we still have a Mike Davis. We still have a Benjamin St. Juste. You know what I mean? So what do you do? Are you just shaving the bottom part of this off and saying bring some more guys in? What do you think?
Yes. I'm still trying to improve this. I think we've heard from Peters to say they're going to keep Lattimore around, give him another year. They made the trade for 2025 is what they made the trade for Lattimore. I think what's going to be really interesting is what do they do about Mike Sanders still? He was impressive as the outside corner, more so than I thought he could be. But they also drafted him to play inside. And, we were hearing from Alex, and Alex was like, he only played inside for Michigan. So what do they do there? Do they say, hey, we want to put this guy in the position that we drafted him to be in? I think Noah did a really good job filling that nickel role, and he's only 26. So, he probably is like, hey, I want a chance to play a little bit more, but I would be interested in having him return. But I think you need to bring in some more talent here, whether it's if you make the decision to play Sanders still on the inside, I think one of your first 2 picks needs to be a corner, because you're drafting a starter to come in as your second cornerback. If you're keeping Sanders still on the outside, and if you're able to re-sign Noah then I think you're looking at a 3rd round picks that you bringing in someone who can be better than Davis, better than St. Juste, but isn't ready to start right now. And so, but I do think you need an influx of talent here, regardless, even on the back end, like you were talking about.
Oh yeah, and this is where I'm focused on the draft. This is where I'm really looking draft heavy. I've talked to you about a couple of guys that I have my eyes on, and that I would potentially even move up for, just because this position, if we can lock, yes, there's a guy.
Tell him who you're dreaming about.
Will Johnson, baby.
Yeah.
Will Johnson. If we can move up to get this guy and pair him with his Michigan Wolverine brother, okay, and Mike Saberstill to have that two-headed come on, man.
Oh, that'd be ecstatic. That is almost as exciting as Myles Garrett. I mean, that is equaling what Philly did with their cornerback. Right. So yeah, I'm all on board with that. I'm just trying to stay realistic here.
Yeah, right. The chances of that happening slim to none. But I mean, yeah, that I would want us to look in the draft and let's get these guys on cheaper deals, guys that we can kind of bring in and mold in our direction. One of the things I loved that Lattimore did for all the stuff I said negatively about him, even when he was hurt, when he first came in, the first thing he did was try to talk to St. Juice, try to talk to Noah. I tried to talk to that secondary and teach them, okay, this is what you're not doing, this is what you need to be doing, and kind of work with them. And that seems to be a theme around the team. You have youth, but you also, behind these youth, you have almost coaches on the field where it's veteran players that have been around that can talk to these guys and kind of lift them up. Okay, you go here, you do this, X, Y, and Z. So let's get some young guys in there, preferably that have played together, and see if they can't mesh and work together. And if we are able to get that front seven set up, that will give us the amount of time that we need. If we looked at this season, we didn't have a great secondary, period. We didn't want daggone St. Juice on the field. Davis couldn't stay on the field because he wasn't great. Obviously, we know Forbes got cut midway through. When we look at this, the reason why we weren't getting gas for 50 and 60 points is because that front seven was creating havoc. Maybe not as much turnovers as we needed, but they were definitely at least getting to the quarterback and doing something there. And it gave our secondary a little bit of time so that now towards the end of the year, you start to see Micah Samerstill get more comfortable and he starts to take a couple shots, make some open field tackles, really start to gain his confidence. And you started to see that with certain pieces of that secondary. So, and if we can do that I want to, let's keep building up. Let's keep the veterans up there and help them teach the youth, build that stuff up, and just keep that cost down. This is the place where I'm really focused on in this offseason, man.
Yep, definitely.
So, all right. Now, what about secondary? I mean, safety. What are you thinking? I know your boy Quan and all that. What you think?
Well, Quan's an all-pro, so we're good there. I think at this point if we need anything, we need backups. It'll be interesting to see do they re-sign Jeremy Chin. I think it's a great possibility. Or does Adam Peters go after his dude from San Francisco, Hufnaga, however you say? Oh, he's a baller. Wouldn't mind that. But I think we've got a decent amount of the two deep is kind of set there. If you bring back Chin and Quan as your starters, you've got Percy Butler, who's still on a rookie contract behind him. And then you've got Jeremy Reeves as a special teamer. So maybe there's a spot there because, Derek Forrest would not be re-signed. Am I missing anybody? Chin, Butler, Quan, Reeves, Forrest. So I think that might have been all they had. So I think there's a spot for a late round draft pick to develop that type of thing. Unless they, Dominic Hampton. We don't, is he linebacker? Is he a safety? Does he take the spot of Derek Forrest? We're not really sure. So I think that's kind of once they figure out who's the starter is going to be next to Quan, then they're kind of set.
Right. And I think this is the place where we can kind of, like you're saying, let's see how all the other chips fall, and then we can kind of make a play on this because this is another group that got better as the season went on, so much so that we see in the playoff game where Quan Martin far be it from me to talk any crap about him now. I mean, hey, your guy, he said he was going to have a meteoric rise. And he did. He balled out. So, to your point, I'm really focused on everything in front of this. I'm really focused on everything leading up to this with the edge and then the D-line, the linebackers and the corners and the safeties. I'm really kind of confident. You sold me on Quan Martin, and I love what they're doing with Chin and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm excited about this, but this is definitely the least of my concerns. Now, real quick, special teams.
Big one.
Yeah.
Let's go kicker. Kicker, you go first.
Okay, so it's Austin. Zane right now is our guy, right? The question is, we're going to talk about, do we re-sign Austin? For me, I say keep Zane. I mean, you ride the hot hand. You go with the guy that you've had. I haven't ever since the injury to Austin Seibert. However great he was, we knew there was a limit. He couldn't kick anything really over 45 or 47. I think that was his long. But then after the injury, he really was never the same. So I wonder what unless they see something. I mean, we're in the future and in training camp and all that stuff. This is the life of a kicker. This. Just as quickly as you can get signed on team, you can get cut, and the next week you can be kicking for somebody else. We're going to talk about that and some of the other stuff we're talking but so for me, I'm kind of like, I'm sorry, but I would move on from Seibert. I'd keep Zane. Maybe if we got a rookie guy we're going to look at in the draft or something, we'll try them out or something. But you ride the hot hand, especially with how wishy-washy we've been on kickers over the last several years. Yeah, I would definitely just keep Zane and stick with who we got right now.
Yeah, I think Zane and Seibert, but mostly Zane, is certainly a possibility, but I'm not sure that we have in-house who our kicker is going to be next year. I think there's a real concern that both Seibert and Gonzalez do not have a very strong leg, not just on field goals, but on kickoffs. They were very pointed in kicking to certain players or certain spots so that our special teams would have to make the tackle because it didn't seem like our kickers could kick it out of the end zone consistently. And, while we love going for it on fourth down, we need someone who can hit a 55-yarder. That is the NFL today. And these two kickers are not that. So I don't know if they are the solution. I will say this about Zane. He had more kicks that were like directly down the middle than I think I can ever remember, especially in Washington. And that became, something I was like, man, these are sometimes he kicks it. It's just no doubters. As soon as it gets in the air, I'm like, we're good. He made it.
Good.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was kind of nice. So that kind of, he grew on me a little bit, but yeah, I'm not so sure that the next year's kicker's on this roster or if we know who he is right now.
Exactly. And look, this is long ways away from me saying one of the highlights of our team in training camp is our kickers. Six kickers later. Yes. But yeah, to that point, and in all honesty, like, love what Zane has done. But if we were to have more accomplished kicker next year or somebody that can come in and is automatic and has a bigger leg, I'm all for that. This isn't as much important to me as the next place we'll go with punter. But for kicker, I'm okay. I look at it this way. From what we've had, I'm just glad we have a stable kicker. You know what I mean? Yes. That could kick it right into the uprights. We started off the season with guys that couldn't even kick it and couldn't even get it done. And then we finally get the guy and then he gets hurt, X, Y, and Z. But so, yeah, that's where I stand. Like, if we do go in another direction, you guys have seen it. That I'm good. I'll follow what you guys are doing. But right now, I'll stick with this guy. Flipping to the other side, punter,
you take
way, sign him, give him the max deal, give him the $300 million contract, whatever he needs. Sign this man immediately. But I honestly, I have to. And this year, obviously, stats-wise, was his lowest. But that's because the offense did so well. That's because we went for it on fourth down so many times, and we're successful when we were. We know how great Tress is and how he's been for us over the years. And I just think having him is a weapon in the special teams. He being able to coffin corner some of these kicks and flip the field position. And then just when I thought he couldn't do anymore, he throws a completion, and he has more passing yards than Dak Prescott in the NFC Championship. Let's go.
Yes.
So, yeah, no, I definitely I would want to re-sign him, bring him back, give him the money he wants, because this has been one of the only few stable spots that we've had on this team over the last 5 years. And I say, let's just keep it there. I think he's worth that. So what do you think?
I'm with you. I am with you. So Tressway was actually listed as a second alternate to the Pro Bowl this year.
This
So I
year,
think so I think he might have had a better season than we kind of realized. There were times when he really wasn't being used at all. I'm with
right?
you. Now, I think he's had a chance the last couple of years to get paid. I think he's been making more than $5 million a year. So I'm hoping that Tress is going to say, because I think he's about 35. I'm hoping Tress is going to say, I love it here. We're winning. I want to be part of this team. I'll take less money to stick around because
Yep.
I want him here. It would be painful to not have him on our team. And so I hope he's willing to take less money and say, go get some other guys to help us keep winning. Knock off my contract by $2 or $3 million because I'm just having fun being part of this at this point in his career. That's what I'm really hoping. And maybe he is. He seems to be that kind of type of like loosey-goosey, very laid-back type guy where he may realize, hey, it's $1 million, dude. I'm making $1 million to play a game a game. Like, I'll take it. Especially coming from where he came from as an undrafted free agent. He may be like roster spot. I'll take it. So that is what I hope for. There was something I almost felt to the fact that they kept bringing in right-footed kickers during the week, but that may have only been just to prepare our punt returners from getting a kick from the other guy. Just kind of wondering what they were doing, why they keep doing that. But I'm with you. I want Tressway back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and shoot, if he can have the year that he had this year where he's sitting down resting for most of the game, then yeah, he'll make a cool $2 million just to sit on the bench and watch 85. And I think I know it's a small thing to some of us, but the whole number thing where Tress has been our guy, and then he recognized this is the future. Give him my number and moved on. That a lot of people have an issue with that. You've seen guys in the past where it's like, all right, pay me $1 million and then I'll switch the numbers with you or something like that.
Yes.
To have Tress do that, he gets it. This is bigger than me. We fought through the dark days when I was used more, and we had stats. His stats were better than the quarterbacks, but now it's the time. This is the upswing. Now we're going back, and I think he's locked in. I mean, hopefully he is. Hopefully they can work out a nice little contract with him. But yes, this to me is as big as keeping a Jaden Daniels. You have to keep this guy because, yes, listen. You know who I am about complimentary football. Yes, complimentary football. If you don't have this where we change the field position, that's huge, man.
You just said that Tressway is as important as Jaden Daniels, Sean.
And I will stand behind that too. Mark my words. Tress has been our MVP for how many years? 4. Jaden has been our MVP for 1.
That's a problem when your tight end is your MVP.
My punter is my guy. Okay.
He is. I love Tressway.
That is the dude. But yeah, we'll see. But look, speaking of that, let's get into free agents. Who are you, of the guys that we have, who are you re-signing? Who are you bringing back? Or who would you like the team to bring back?
Yeah. So, sorry, my chair falls. So we've kind of mentioned some of their names. Bobby Wagner you bring him back for one more season. Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm open to Jeremy Chin coming back as the starting safety. I'm open to Noah Igbenogany. Now that I've learned how to pronounce your name, you can't leave. As a nickel corner, I think he's really good depth to have out there. I'm open to Zach Ertz. I would like for him to come back, even though he's older. Tressway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Olamide Zaccheaus, I think, is the wide receiver that I would like to have come back. That's like the one person I would peg. And then here's one that's going to kind of surprise you. Special teamer Nick Bellore. He was brought in after the season, but he also was one of our like Pro Bowl alternates. It was either him or Reeves making tackles every time down the field. I think he was kind of a key person. And then I'm actually for keeping our entire tight end room intact. Bring back John Bates if he's that important of a blocker for us. So those are like my absolutes. Like I'll stop there and say like I want these guys back.
So yeah, we don't switch on. We're no different on Ertz, no different on Chen, Wagner, Tress, no Igbenogany, Bates. I'm with you on all those guys. We've talked about kicker. I can move on from Austin Seibert. As far as wide receivers, I'm not gonna lie to you. I would not feel bad if they removed Noah Brown, Diami, and Olamide Zaccheaus.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have an issue with that if they had a plan to go elsewhere. I do like potentially keeping Olamide Zaccheaus because you've been talking about him. He has been, of the other guys outside of maybe Ertz and McLaurin, he has been probably the most consistent guy for us and the biggest weapon, if you will. So yeah, I'm not going to even try, even though I called Diami Brown playoff elite. His time with me has run out. I'm good moving on from him. Noah Brown, you got to stay on the field. I understand, you got hurt X, Y, and Z, but after that, didn't look like the guy that did in the first. And even when he first came in, he made a couple catches here and there, and he did a couple things, but he wasn't ever the game breaker. He wasn't ever getting 10 plus, and that type of stuff. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Now, what about the guys like Fowler Jr.? What direction would you go on that?
He could be a yes. He could be a yes on a short deal, just like we kind of did here. Because, I certainly don't want to lose his sack production. But I think, it kind of depends on what do we do with Myles Garrett. But, yeah, I'm open to bringing him back.
Yeah. I had 50-50 on here.
Yeah.
It's funny that you said that. And like you said, the sack production was good, but we got to be able to stop the run, and he's got to set that edge in there. And the fact that he is maybe a little on the lighter side, and he is more of a specialist, that could work against him.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. Let's go back to the running back room. Rodriguez.
I could care less. Sure,
yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think we can upgrade there if he's back. Just like you bringing back Diami and Noah. If they want to come back, sure. But I'm not guaranteeing them spots. Like, you're gonna have to earn it. You're gonna have to win that spot.
Right. And this is where I look at more, Peters and Harris and those guys, where you kept the Diami Browns, you kept Rodriguez, kept some of these guys, and got rid of the Jahan. So what are you seeing in house? What do you like about these guys that you are continuing to bring them in and continuing to work with them? For me, Diami, those guys know. Rodriguez, because I can see us potentially moving on for Brian Robinson, I would potentially keep Rodriguez. But I don't think that he really moves up the list. I think he's just one of those, a guy that you bring in when you need another bruiser. I don't think – I've never been one that jumped on board like a lot of people that have said he should be starting. I don't think he's that level yet. I think he's a great change of pace, or a great, or our starters he needs a win. Let's get this guy in, or like what he was used for later in this year, where fourth quarter we need to grind out the clock. We needed somebody that has fresh legs. Let's bring in Rodriguez. Let him go do this later in the game to kind of solidify this ball game, to get this win. So
yeah.
I would bring him back if we moved on, but a lot of that has to do with what we do with the guys that are ahead of him on that list. So, anybody else that you?
I'm willing to bring back Jamison Crowder, but the same thing. Like, yeah, you can come back, but there's no guarantee you got a spot.
Right.
And until we can do better than Jamison, I don't mind seeing him on there. Same thing we've kind of talked about Mariota if he wants to come back. I have no problem bringing back a Cornelius Lucas and a Trent Scott as backups. But Lucas is really getting older. He's going to be like 36, 37. So I really think we need to be finding someone younger than him. I'm not opposed to bringing these guys back, but I don't think they're impact players. The other guy I would bring back for the special teams aspect and let him be a training camp invite is Michael Walker. He was number 32, another special teams guy out there. So, again, these are not guys I'm excited about. I'm not expecting them to play a lot, but the depth part of this, I'm okay bringing these guys back. I think they played well. That I think, it'd be great to have them back on our roster for next year.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. a lot of these guys, it's the feel good story. It's that they would be good depth. They would be good help at certain positions. And it would be great to have him, but at the same time, let's just see what Harris and Peters and those guys will do. You've mentioned, Peters' connection with San Francisco and the guys that he brought in over there. Mm-hmm. Now that he has 1 year of success by putting this team the way he's put it, how many of those guys from San Francisco that are maybe not happy over there, or some of the other places he's been, are saying, "Hey, do you guys have any availability?" And then they can bring it in house. So I'm more interested in kind of when we look at some of these names, I'm more interested in, okay, I see you, I like what you've done, but let me just see what's out there. Now that I have the ability to be like, hey, do you want to come over? And they're actually interested. Yeah, let me see what else is out there. But I do want to keep the guys in here like a Wagner, like an Ertz, like a Tresque, that are character guys, that are culture guys, that will keep that locker room. Bates is another guy that embody kind of what we're looking for in Washington. So that I don't want to disrupt that at all. But some of these other guys, I'm definitely willing to be like, let me throw you let's see what you want. See if you can go out there and get a better contract or whatever. I'm gonna see what I can get on this side.
Absolutely. You know what's kind of really surprising? Do you remember draft day 4 years ago when Brevin Jordan was available and we drafted John Bates, and the three of us erupted and we're like, who is this guy? And you and I both are saying like, yeah, we should re-sign him. He's solid.
Yeah. Boise State's own, man.
Yeah.
John Bates.
Yeah.
And then where's what's his name? Is it not Carson Strong? Carson, who is our tight end that we had a couple years that we drafted that year from Nevada?
Oh, Cole Turner.
Yes.
Oh God, he's never. Oh my gosh, we were so hyped on that guy.
I staked the claim on that. I said, "This is it. This guy's going to do it." You see what he did in college? Well, he ain't do nothing in the league. I know. Man.
We were hyped on that guy. Rough. Well, you know what I'm most excited about with free agents? You know who's not going to be on my team?
Oh,
Benjamin St-Juste.
There it is.
Thank
Here, come on.
Right? Yeah, get that out of here. Get
out of here. All right, so cap casualties. I've heard a couple names kind of in that direction. Wiley is one of those names that has come up. Who do you think will be some of those cap casualties for Washington?
Yeah, I don't know. These are the tough ones. We talked about it offline a lot. So technically, they can get rid of Marshawn Lattimore for no cap hit and save $18 million. That's a lot for a guy who was showing a little too much emotion out there and not a whole lot of production. However, let's remember, Adam Peters said when they made the trade, this was for 2025, and we feel like we just got a head start on free agency. And the guy came in hurt. And so do we need to give him the benefit of the doubt of a whole season to actually play for us? There's warning signs there. His head kind of really bothers me. I love how competitive he is, but he seems to, his play showed that he's pretty flag happy. We already had that with St-Juste. And then when he starts getting into tuffles with people, I think that's a little bit of a concern of him. Would you move on from Lattimore regardless of whatever junk you're going to get from making that trade, or do you think you got to keep him around?
Honestly, that's a rough one for me. I've talked to you about it multiple times. I did as part of the Fans First Network. We do a little thing called Freaky Friday, where we talk about players that potentially came to our team that were great before and maybe in question. This wasn't one of those guys because the jury's still out. We don't know how the full thing is coming. But I did mention that bringing him in-house, albeit great at the time and great when it looks great on paper, what was it that the Saints saw and maybe that they were willing to give up? And what was it? What are we truly getting? Those first 4 games stink that he wasn't in there. But once he got in, he did do some things. But I think to your point, he clearly is not a problem in the locker room, but on the field, he does create those issues. And then B, there are times when some of those it backfires, where those guys that he's creating issues, he's trying to get in their head, and they're playing chess where he's playing checkers, and now they're getting past him and getting a completion X, Y, and Z. So I know he has ability, and we're probably going to play a lot more teams that don't have solidified wide receivers that maybe they can work around it. So I would give him the benefit of the doubt for one more year. Personally, I would have I struggle with this one because I know how good he can be, and that cap hit makes it a little easier for me to lean the other way. But it would really stresses me out is when you have certain games like the Tampa Bay game, and he's going up against Evans, and Evans is still completing the passes, even though they're both getting into it. There's got to be a certain point where you're saying to yourself, all right, this ain't working. So I need to go switch up what I'm doing instead of continually trying to fight, because these guys it's not getting in their head like maybe I would have liked it to. So that's something that I think if we can keep him and have that conversation with him and see how he plays out this next year. And if he can stay healthy, yes, I would love to keep him, but we talked about it. We talked to Ab about it, about getting ahead of the game potentially, and they probably won't do that. And to your point, they've already come out and said this is for 2025. But it definitely concerns me, some of the things that I saw, especially in that Eagles game, that it's kind of like I'm okay with you fighting and arguing with the guy if you're shutting him down on the back end. But if he is dominating you and scoring multiple touchdowns and doing all that stuff, and you're still getting penalized for getting in his face, I can't go for that.
Right. The only problem with cutting him would mean that is opening up a roster hole that you have to fill. We're already talking about, is Sanders still going to be our outside corner? But if you cut Lattimore, now you need a number one,
Right.
And if you cut Lattimore, you cannot trade for Myles Garrett, because you cannot get rid of your first round pick, because then what are you gonna do at corner?
Exactly.
So that's also something to think about, to where we may need to give it another year experiment to see what we got.
Oh yeah.
So the other one, and this is the one that's near and dear to the heart, it's a hard one here. Jonathan Allen is due to make $22 million this year. If you were to cut him, there would be a $6 million cap hit. So it's not cheap, but you're saving $16 million to go towards another roster spot. That could be the Myles Garrett contract, for example, if you were to kind of think of it in that term. I will say this. Someone like that is probably not going to be, and next year I think his contract's up. So he's not really tradable because of that. Why would Cleveland want to take on someone for 1 year later? They have to decide they have to pay him. So I think fans need to not be including him in trade opportunities. But the thing we got to look at is $16 million in savings. Does it allow us to get another position and utilize potentially the draft to do something else with our defensive line? What do you think?
Yeah, no, it definitely will free up some space and some money for us. And I mean, look, I just don't. The production has not been what we have expected, and he's been in here to stop the run, and that's been our number one problem on defense is consistently stopping the run. So I think you do lean in that direction to kind of potentially move on. I'm trying to block my loyalty to him and the team, and how much he was with us through all these rough years. And even I had that video I'll send it to you after the show of him when he's in the do-rag and the shade, and JP Finley's asking him like, well, what happened? He's like, nothing happened. We just didn't play. We didn't play well. And he's like, well, what do you think going forward? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. This is ridiculous. 7 years of this crap, and it's the same stuff. I'm tired of it. You know what I mean? So I like that fire, and I like all that. But that also, I was thinking last year, maybe his time is up. Maybe he is fed up, and we do need to move on from him now. You have this year, and obviously he gets hurt, but then comes back in, and it's great to see the excitement that he had and everything like that. But you got to start thinking about the future. You got to start getting ahead of the game. And I think it might be that time. From a business standpoint, I'm saying you make the move. I'm saying you kind of you move on and you see what you can do that's better, because honestly, you can't even look at the stats and say, okay, well, this is what you're losing. This is the production you're losing, because he has struggled from time to time, and just if at the very least has not lived up to our expectations. So I would not like it if they made that move, but I would understand it, and I would, wish him all the best elsewhere.
I think from a business standpoint, it's really hard to have him and Payne on the roster both making over $20 million a season.
Yeah. Yep.
That part doesn't add up to me. Now, if he's willing to take a pay cut, do an extension, a 3-year extension, and reduce that, maybe there's some conversations there. If Daron Payne is part of a trade package himself or a package for something else, same thing. Will you let's lower your cap number with an extension. But yeah, $22 million is a lot of money for that position, for that production. And from a business standpoint, that's hard to see them absorbing that next year.
Yeah, I don't foresee that happening, but it stinks. It stinks because you're happy for him because he came back just because he knew we were going to get to the playoffs, and he was able to contribute in the playoffs for us. But you saw last year the writing was kind of on the wall, so we'll see what they do. Yeah. Anybody else?
There's one more, and I think this guy may fall into the same kind of conversation we just had with Lattimore. Like, if you get rid of him, then you need to replace him. And how are you going to do that? It would be at right tackle, Andrew Wiley. So he's due about $10 million this year. If you cut him, it'd be a $2.6 million cap hit, but you would have $7.5 million in savings. That $7.5 million can go towards an impact player of some sort. I mean, so that could be pretty valuable. However, what we just said, if you cut your right tackle, now you have a hole at right tackle. Depending on what you do at, in free agency, if you do a trades, you are now creating another hole on your roster. So that's where it's like, I'm not sure if we already know we need to improve the offensive line. Do we need to improve it by getting a better left tackle, moving Coleman into left guard, and that's the change for this year?
And I think that's what it is. And it goes back to kind of like my dad would always say, you don't leave a job until you have another one lined up or that you're going into. You don't create that issue unless you have something else or somebody else that you're willing to put in that spot. Yes. So whereas we have had issues with Wiley, and, albeit he played a little bit better this year, it's been kind of the same thing where it's like, if we move on, I don't have an issue with us moving on, but where are we moving to? What is the spot? Or is there a guy that we're looking for in free agency? Do we have our eyes on somebody in the draft? Let's do that. So if they're willing to make that move, then I think it would have to. Then I would trust that they know the direction that they were going. But to your point, yeah, we're going to have to make sure that if we do make it, we are on the right page. We know where we're going with that. So,
and I think if you cut an Andrew Wiley, you're either saying your Brandon Coleman moves over to right tackle and you're drafting a left tackle early, or you're saying one of our first 3 picks is going to have to be a right tackle to replace him.
Yep.
And that's the kind of like forcing yourself into make another move is where I'm just kind of wondering, is that worth it?
Yeah. Or we use our Adam Peters connection and he talks to Silverback Trent Williams and he forgives Washington for what we did under Dan Snyder and brings him home.
Yes.
Oh, that would be beautiful. What would it take? I don't know. But yeah.
That would be.
Oh, me, oh my. All right, Will. Ladies and gentlemen, this offseason is going to be full of surprises, full of just I don't even want to say anxiety. I want to say just unbridled optimism. Like,
yes,
we're coming off an NFC championship appearance, and we have nowhere to go but up from here. Will, you talked about it earlier on. Like, this is probably the best we're going to feel after losing the NFC Championship, because we weren't supposed to be here.
Right.
We were a 4-win team last year, and now we're at this spot. So, Will, now, I mean, we got everything in front of us. If the off seasons were great when we sucked, imagine this off season what we're going to do, man.
Right, exactly. Well, and I just got a lot of faith in our front office, and we had a lot of holes. That's what made our playoff run so interesting and so much fun. But we've got a lot of holes, and so it's just going to be really, really fun to see what they do now in year 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey man, we are here for it, ladies and gentlemen. So look, this has been Washington Football Weekly. We appreciate you hopping in here and sticking with us for about 2 hours. Hey, we got to get this thing off the right way. Will, where can the people find us if they're not looking on YouTube or stuff like that?
Right. On Twitter, X, Wash FB Weekly is where we post our shows to give you some direct links to it. We also can be found on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Follow us, subscribe, like to it so that they get downloaded right to you. And you will find that there's additional content other than just these podcasts, or especially this one. We're going to trim it up into smaller segments on this one. This is a long one, so that if there's smaller segments you want to watch or listen to, you will be able to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We will have Throwback Thursday coming up, with the day being number 6. So start thinking about who's your most memorable number 6 player that you had that was on Washington. And Freaky Friday wasn't with you last week. It will be here this week. My guy, Ryan Clark, once Washington Redskin, then went on to the Steelers, appeared in 2 Super Bowls, and before coming back to Washington in 2014 for his last year in playing in the league. So definitely stay tuned to that. It's going to be interesting. Monday morning quarterback with my guy Will, and a lot of just little emergency pods here and there, man. There's just so much stuff going on, and sometimes we don't want to wait till Wednesday to get that information to you.
That's right.
So, as we said, hey, we are the Commanders, and for now, it looks like it's going to be this way. We will
Left
stay
hand up.
the Commanders, absolutely. So, for my guy Will Kramer, it's your boy Sean Spencer. We are going to go ahead and get out of here. We hope you have a good night, and hey, like my guy said, left hand up, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out.
Gibbs, you got a good chance. Let me tell you something about some good fans. Back in the day, RFK was our palace. If you don't know, you need to ask about us. Think we're gonna lose? Well, I can't believe you doubters had